Hey, how's it going, everybody? Sarasota Tim, coming to you from beautiful Sarasota Bay over here near Lido Key in this direction right there, over to St. Armand's. And right behind me is Bird Key, a very exclusive neighborhood, our former home to Jerry Springer, actually. And anyway, today's video, I want to talk to you guys about cars. And I want to talk to you about buying them, and should you buy or should you lease? What's the difference? Is there a better way to go? Well, let's get into it. I was in the car business for about 20 years, 100 years ago. But things haven't changed. Numbers don't change. Horse trading doesn't change. And buying options have changed. In my day, there was no such thing as leasing, and then it was introduced. And it was introduced by the manufacturers to help people buy more car for less money per month. It is a payment deal. With leasing, basically, to simplify it to you, if you wanted to lease this Honda Accord right here, it would be a car you might want to really consider. Because what do you pay when you lease? I'll tell you right now. You pay what they think the car will lose in its value over a certain period of time. Leases are generally 2 to 3 years. In the early days, there were leases that were 4 and 5 years to help people get really low payments, but they weren't really much different than buying. And that was the worst mistake anybody ever made, because you see, a car only depreciates so much in 3 years, but a car depreciates a whole lot in 4 or 5 years. So what's going to happen? If you have to pay for the depreciation, you're pretty much paying everything. And so let's get back to what I said about the depreciation. How much does a car depreciate? Well, before the pandemic and the crazy... It's crazy I'm making this video out here on this noisy road, isn't it? It's the second time I've done it today. Well, anyway, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer on some things. Depreciation on a car like a Honda, we all know, is got a good resale value. So it obviously is not going to depreciate as much as a Mercury Sable or a Ford Taurus or Chevy Cavalier. These cars, they don't even make them anymore. But those cars, obviously, you know, once you drove it off the lot and after a couple of years, the bottom fell out. They were worth nothing. Those are not cars you want to lease. That's why you see so many people riding around like they're ultra rich, driving Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, Lexus, heck, even Maseratis. I don't even know if Ferrari has it or not, but people are leasing very high ticket items that have proven to have a good resale value. So they go in, they say, I want to buy this car. And they say, all right, if you want to buy it, it's so much money. You can write me a check. And that's the dumbest thing in the world. It's a depreciating asset. Even with good resale value, if you take a $10 bill and go and change it in on the exchange for a $5 bill, you haven't done a very smart thing. So paying cash for a car is not smart. Paying a high interest rate isn't smart either. But manufacturers for years have been offering cars for 1.9, 0, 2.9, 3.9, basically free money. I mean, the amount of interest you pay, even at 2 or 3.9%, for 4 or 5 years or 3 years is minimal compared to what you can just put your money in the bank today and get 4.5 to 5%. How long that lasts, I don't know. But at the time of making this video, this car might be $30,000, $35,000, and I can go put it into a CD for a year or 6 months and get 4 or 5%, or I can finance that car for 2.9 or 3.9 and own it. But let's talk about the leasing before we get to purchasing. What's the interest rate on leasing? Well, they don't call it an interest rate. They call it a money factor, which is nothing more than an interest rate. It's a charge that they charge for you to rent the car, which is another way of leasing. It's called renting. So when you lease a car and it's going to depreciate so much money in 3 years, before the pandemic, I was going to say a moment ago, most cars that had a good resale value would still depreciate 50 to 45%, 40% anyway, in 3 years. Let's make it simple. You got a $50,000 car, and in 3 years it's worth half that. That's $25,000. That's how much the leasing company wants you to give them for 3 years, plus the money factor, the interest rate, the little charge they have. It's really not too bad, because the whole idea behind leasing is they get the car back, or you can buy it at the end of the lease. Well, how much can you buy it for? They give it to you in writing. It's etched in stone. No matter if the car is worth, it's going to be worth 25 grand, let's say. It's a $50,000 car. And in 3 years, you find out that car is only worth 10. You're like, here's the keys. I don't want it. Or like what happened during the pandemic, everyone that came off of a lease, let's sit in the car and talk. Everyone that came off of a lease, they couldn't get cars. They weren't making any cars. The chip shortage and all this. So everybody that leased a car right before the pandemic, after the, let's get that air conditioning on. After the pandemic was over, that car that was $25,000 that you could buy it for was worth $30,000. And so a lot of people were, being offered a lot of money for the cars they bought a few years ago. A lot of people were being, very tempted to buy their car off lease and selling it or just keeping it because it was worth a lot of money. The dynamics in the car business changed like we've never seen in our lifetime. But in general, if they depreciate half, that's how much you pay is the other half. That way, if you have to hand the keys back to Toyota or Honda or Lexus, they can go to auction, or the dealer will say, I'll give you that, and they get the car. And they don't think that they're paying too much for it. They're getting it for really kind of a wholesale price, and then they can resell it for more money. Or the leasing company can say, it's not worth that, and we estimated the value wrong, so they go to the auction with it, and they sell it and get whatever they can and take their medicine. But you're not obligated to anything more than how much this car depreciates to lease it. And you have that option to buy it, and you can defer it. So instead of buying it today and having a bigger payment, because you're going to be based on the whole price versus half of it, then let's say you do want to buy it. You actually wanted to buy it from day one. You can defer that by buying it for that $25,000, that half, the other half, at the end of the lease, and then just financing that and having payments for 3 more years that are going to be about equal to what you've been paying. Versus if you start from day one on a purchase and you put the whole amount in the loan, your payment would be twice that. So a $300 payment could be $600. So it all depends on your budget. And so leasing is a great way for people that want to stay in warranty. They don't want to come out of a warranty. They don't want to drive a car more than a couple, 3 years. They get bored with them. They want something else. They got to have the latest and greatest. Leasing is for someone that has a good cash flow coming in every month, that they don't care that they're making a payment, but they're not making car repairs either. You can rational it any way you want, but leasing is probably half or more of the purchases today. It's the only way people can afford them. And if they did have the money, like I said earlier in the video, it would really be silly to take 50 or 100 grand out of your bank account and give it to the dealer or to the manufacturer for a car that's going to drop 30, 40, 50%, and even more in 3 short years, where you keep your 40, 50, 60, 100 grand and invest it in the stock market, or buy and sell something yourself, or put it into a CD that's a sure thing, even though it's a minimal amount. It's better than turning a $10 bill into a $5 bill, right? So we all agree on that. But why are people leasing? Well, we just mentioned the pros. Let's talk about the cons. All right, so you lease your car and they tell you, look, we estimate that car to be worth X dollars in 3 years. And you must keep that car maintained. You must keep that car pretty. You must keep those tires like new. When we get it back, we want to see it other than normal wear and tear. We don't want to see it dented up, door dinged, scratches, and bald tires. And we certainly don't want to see it with excessive mileage. So what is excessive mileage? Well, are you ready? When you lease a car, they give you a whopping 12,000 miles per year allotment, 1,000 miles per month. I can drive 1,000 miles in a week. No, just kidding. But people generally will drive, especially if they're buying an economy car, a heck of a lot more than that. I mean, you see these used Hondas and Toyotas with 100,000, 80,000, 60,000 miles on them, 1, 2, 3 years old. That's because they're out there on the road driving them. They got 2 jobs. They travel. They use their car for business, whatever. So leasing, a con is you can't use it. That's right. You can buy it. You can lease it, you can make those low payments, you can take it home and you can walk around it and you can look at it, but don't you drive it. At least don't drive it more than 1,000 miles a month on average, or go anywhere very far. Don't think about taking some nice road trips and stuff and exceeding the mileage, because the penalty is strong. I'm talking 20 cents for every mile you go over 12,000 miles. So in 3 years, you get 36,000. You bring it back with 70,000 or 50 or 60,000. You do the math. Anything over 36,000 times 20 cents. So every 5 miles, another $1. That's like one trip down to 7-Eleven or the Wawa for a coffee and back home. So you can add $1 to that coffee. So it can add up. So it takes a lot of the fun out of it. Yeah, it's affordable. You know, I'm driving this fancy car. People see me in it. I got a Jag. I got a Lexus. I got the Mercedes emblem on the front. But I'm renting this junk. I'm not owning it. You don't even own it when you buy it, to be honest with you. The bank owns it. But you're on your way to owning it. And every lease payment you make, it's like renting an apartment. Every payment you make is like throwing money out the window. Yeah, you lived in it. Yeah, you got a roof over your head. You got some usage value. But at the end of the lease, you're out. It's $2,000 a month now for an apartment. You're out $24,000 and you own nothing. And if you bought the car and you put a good down payment and you bought a car that has a good resale value, when you go to sell it on a retail basis, not wholesale, you know, that's your car. And you don't have a residual, which is the future estimated value. And you can drive that car all you want. You can take your road trips. And yeah, your payment's going to be a little higher, or you can put a substantial down payment. Maybe you have a car that you don't owe anything on, you're going to put down on it. Or you have 5 or 10 grand you want to put down on it. Maybe you don't care. You have a good cash flow like the lease customer, but you don't want to be limited to your mileage. So you do put down, you know, a good amount of money. But not too much, because it's really silly, because then again, you got the depreciation thing. But I would say that there's definitely pros and cons to both. Right now on this Honda Accord, you can purchase it for 2.9% up to 2 years and 3.9% up to 5 years, 60-month financing. Well, folks, that's pretty cheap. That's about, you know, $2,500 to $3,500 in interest if you made every single payment and kept that car for 5 years. If you made an extra $100 a month payment or $200 on your payment, you would pay it off a lot quicker and you wouldn't pay that much interest. And the interest rate is already very low. They used to have 0 point whatever, but then again, you're paying for it somewhere. When you buy that car and they're going to charge you like no interest, you know you're paying for it in the price somewhere. There's no free lunch, right? But buying versus leasing, well, that's your decision. You want to lease one and get much more car for half the payment every month, but you can't use it. Or do you want to buy a car that meets your needs and you're going to own it and you're going to drive it for 5 or 10 years. It's going to be your car. You really don't care how much it depreciates, because it's like buying a house. If you're going to live in it and die in it, what do you care if it goes up or down? You're not flipping it. You're not selling it. It's your house. You want to live in it. You're getting usage value. The most usage value you get from an automobile is the longer you own it, the more usage value you get. Now, the longer you own it comes with more maintenance. As you get more miles, things wear out and you got to put money in it. But today, it's not like it used to be. The cars are very reliable, like these Hondas. Changing the oil, putting brakes and tires could be about all you'll do for up to well over 100,000 miles. Seriously, it's just very, very low maintenance. As long as you drive right, act right, change that oil and everything else, it's got that kind of a record. Some cars are a lot higher maintenance, or at least they recommend it, and you can spend a lot of money over 10 years if you wanted to keep it. So that's kind of the long and short. One is definitely able to buy cheaper by leasing, renting, and one is buying what you can afford to pay every month. But if you keep it a while, or forever, for a long time, I should say, that's your best value. And whenever you're ready to sell it, 2 or 3 years, that's your property. That's money you've put in. And when you go to sell it private party to somebody, and then you can show them all your maintenance records, and you've got a car that looks like, wow, there's a mint condition, garage kept, a Honda Accord EX that's 5 years old and looks like new, low mileage or high mileage. It's still a very sellable car. And, if we happen to be in an economy that's not in a depression, you'll get good money for it. So I don't know what more I can add to the leasing versus buying, other than leasing is more prevalent today than ever in the history of buying cars. In my day, when I was in the car business, we had to all but horse tie and hog tie someone to do it. People were like, no, because the payment wasn't that much difference, because the quality of the cars in those days, the depreciation, people had 300 cars on the lot. Dealers were selling, there were so many cars that they didn't hold a good resale value. And so it wasn't really that great. And the money factor and all that wasn't good. But now it's become so popular. It's like with anything, with volume, you get lower prices. So now, with more than half the people probably leasing, it's a very attractive, interesting thing to look at. But remember, the biggest downfall is you cannot use your car. If you lease it, you can't drive it. You can only go to the store and church on Sunday. Forget your road trips, forget the high mileage. I know that some people say, I leased one and I put 100,000 miles on it. I took it to the dealer and traded it in. He didn't count that against me. He just traded it in and I got me another one, because that's the whole idea. And it's true, it's to create loyalty, because you'll actually pay a fee if you take the keys back at the end of the lease and say, I don't want this Toyota. I'm going to go buy a Honda now, or lease one. They charge you like $300-400 to a disposal fee. They get all these little fees, but that doesn't apply if you just get yourself another one. But that dealer that told you, we're going to take it in trade, we'll eat all that, baloney. High mileage is high mileage. He's going to put a dollar figure on that car when he appraises it, and to buy it from the leasing company, they're not going to penalize you, because the dealer is actually going to buy it, and he's going to absorb that. So there's a lot of truth to that. But still, he's not going to pay you what a 20,000 mile car is versus a 80,000 mile car. So just keep that in mind. So you can do two things. You can buy it after the end of the lease and keep going on the payments and keep the payment low. Or you can buy it all up front and pay twice the price, and after 5 years you don't owe any more payments. Or you can trade it in and get you a new one every few years and stay in the warranty and all that. So whatever you decide to do, I hope you get out there, find the right one, get a good resale value one, and crush it.